Cade Cunningham is better than Paolo Banchero, and the Locked On Network agrees. Find out where Cade and Paolo ranked in the Locked On Network's top 100 list for the NBA in today's episode, Locked On Pistons Podcast. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I am your host, Cade Cunningham. I've been covering the Detroit Pistons for the last 4 years for the Locked On Network. Been a credential media member over the last 3 years. I want to say thank you to all of you who make Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already over to the YouTube channel, or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. Not going to be a very long intro today. We are having a crossover episode with Philip Rossman-Reich of the Locked On Magic episode. We are going to discuss where Cade and Paolo Banchero ranked in the Locked On's top 100 list for the NBA. We talk about where these teams look heading into this season. And then also, should we see or will we see any of their teammates rise up the top 100 list next season? So we're going to discuss all of that. It was a super fun episode. I think you guys will enjoy it. I'll see you guys later. Enjoy today's episode. Until next time, see you guys later. Enjoy it.
This is Philip Rossman-Reich, the host of Locked On Magic. Welcoming in the great host of Locked On Pistons, Cade Cunningham, one of the best hosts on the Locked On Podcast Network.
Appreciate it.
Who maybe upset a few Magic fans with an episode earlier this summer. We referenced it several times, but I wanted to bring him in not only because of that, but because I think one of the central debates, and the Locked On Podcast Network released their Locked On NBA the Locked On NBA Top 100 list on Monday. So debate season is here. We're officially in the final countdown. We're doing these lists. I wanted to bring Ku in here because I think one of the central debates in the Eastern Conference, and maybe not quite in the league at large, but is trying to figure out where some of these rising stars like Cade Cunningham, like Paolo Banchero, like Franz Wagner, where they fit into the larger NBA ecosystem, especially as they start to come into their own and start to be on contending teams. So we're going to start with Cade Cunningham because Cade Cunningham did come into the top 20 in the Locked On NBA Top 100. I'm going to put the graphic up here. Cade Cunningham sitting at number 15. Ku, I want to start here. What is your reaction to Cade breaking that through to that top 20? Being number 15, I think that's a little higher than, certainly, I think it's a little higher than I had him. I will admit I had Paolo ahead of him. But what did you think about Cade being in the top 15 in the top 20?
Yeah, I think 15th is right around where he should be. I had him, I believe, first of all, I want to say making these lists are incredibly hard. Like I now feel for everyone who has to, like the ESPNs, the Bleacher Report, like making these lists are very hard. It took me like 2 to 3 days to sort through this list. I made one list and then I deleted it, went back and had to redo it all over again. I forgot somebody and I was like, okay, I got to redo this whole thing.
That's always the fear, is that you forget somebody.
Yes, I forgot. I think I forgot Zubac in the top 50, and I was like, okay, nope, gotta redo this whole thing. It was this bad. So I feel for everyone that has to make these lists. But on my list, I believe I had Cade around 12 or 13. So this is right around where I would have had him. 15th is good for me. Another takeaway I had with Cade being 15, I also had this belief that wherever Cade slotted in, I think Mobley should be right behind him, and that's how they had it here, 15, 16. That's how I had it. I think those two guys are just right next to each other, so I think that makes sense. I think Cade, who was all-NBA third team this year, I think he had a spectacular season. I think what's crazy is that he can get even better. He's still even not the most efficient he could be. He could become a better finisher. There's multiple areas of his game that he can get so much better and really rise to crack the top 10 soon. So I think 15 is good for where he is right now. I think some Pistons fans will probably want him to be close to the top 10, but I think 15 is a more than fair ranking for Cade after this past year.
Yeah, and look, I'm a big Cade guy too. I was a big believer in Cade. I know Cade was, I think we've talked about this before on the pod, where Cade was sort of in the spot that Paolo is in now, before last season, where there's just all this criticism about his efficiency and about the kind of shots that he's taking. And obviously winning puts a lot of shine on everybody and makes everybody look a whole lot better and gets you a lot more attention. But Cade really took a step up, and look, being healthy is a big factor. When you're looking at how Cade developed over the last year, how much did the players that they added and building a roster better suited for winning, how much did that boost Cade as much as Cade boosted those players around him for the Pistons to get to the 6th seed and make the playoffs?
So I think it's a good question because a lot of it was due to the players around him, but a lot of it was due to his own improvements as well. So adding Malik Beasley, and my thing was 2 seasons ago when the Pistons had their worst season, maybe one of the worst seasons ever in NBA history. They were two of their top 5 minute getters were James Wiseman and Killian Hayes. And yes, I understand I believed in Killian Hayes until the dying breath, but the dying breath has come. But like,
there's a lot of real estate on Killian Island.
yes, I've sold mine. But James Wiseman and Killian Hayes were two of the top 5 minute getters. They had a lot of guys that just aren't NBA players getting minutes, and a lot of lineups that just didn't make sense. So I think a lot of it comes from just simply having NBA players, not just stars. It didn't have to be crazy, but just simply having guys who are NBA players in your rotation, I think was a big deal when it came to the win-loss for the team. And obviously adding the spacing of Malik Beasley really helped Cade space the floor out, open up drives a little bit more for him for sure. That all helped. And having a 4 like Tobias, because the Pistons haven't had a 4 for like 5-6 years. They haven't since Blake. They've been playing 3s at the 4. They've been playing 5s at the 4. No real 4s. Tobias is that. And that's why he had such a crazy on-off swing for the Pistons this year, because they finally had one. So I think that helped a ton for sure. But one of my favorite conversations I had with the player this year was with Cade midseason. And I had talked with this camp a little bit about this before the season started. I talked with his trainer and his brother. And then midseason, I got to ask him about this. And he spoke about how he went into this season wanting to change his shot diet up a little more. And that he understood that the analytics crew don't like mid-ranges as much. And he loves the fact that he's great at mid-range and he wants to get to it, but he looks at it as more of a tool in his arsenal now instead of like his go-to shot. And when you look at his shot diet, this was by far a career low with Cade taking long twos. I believe he went from around 18% on long twos of his shots going down to 7% of his twos were 7% of his shots were long twos. He went to the floater a lot more. I believe he was the best guard at hook shots in the NBA. He ranked in the top 10 in hook percentage, and the only other guys in the top 10 were big men. So Cade's a big guard. He's like 6'6", 6'7", but he went to the hook a lot more in that little 5 to 8 foot range. He was in I believe the 91st percentile in that range on hook shots, on floaters, that little 5 to 8 foot area. So kind of the paint, but not slightly at the rim. He turned a lot of those long twos into those type of shots, and then also turned those long twos into pull-up threes, which he had a career best season as well. So I thought a lot of what Cade did this year and how great of a season he had was due, having NBA players around him. But he also became a better player when it comes to the mental part of the game, taking better shots, having better process within the offense. And I thought that led to a great season for him. And I think even better process with that will lead to even more efficiency jumps that you'll see from him, hopefully this upcoming year.
Yeah, and like that, we'll get to Paolo here in a minute, but that's a big point I always make about the critics of Paolo Banchero. And Paolo Banchero was taken a year after Cade, so like if you're looking at the development curve, like Paolo's one notch on the x-axis or y-axis, I forget my geometry, is like one notch behind. So they're like, it's important to remember, like these are still really young players. Like, yes, your prime comes a little bit earlier now, or you have to be in your prime a little bit earlier now because of the salary cap. The salary cap constrictions and how quickly you have to try and win titles. But all these guys are going to keep getting better. And Cade showed us last year, being healthy is just number one thing. Like that was a big thing for Paolo last year. He wasn't healthy for a good chunk of the season, needed time to get back in shape. Being healthy is a big part, but like Cade clearly got better. So having come off the playoff appearance, like we know what the situation is in the East. We're going to talk about it a little bit later. Coming off the playoff appearance, how much has that, at least to your perception, changed how Cade has approached this summer and changed what you're thinking about and what he can do for this upcoming season?
Yeah, I think Cade could easily get into the top 10 of the NBA this year. I think I've spoken about this a lot on my podcast, to where if Cade can become like a top 5, top 10 offensive player in the league, that would be fantastic. That would be great. But my ideal, and I'm not saying that's impossible, it certainly is something he can do eventually in his career. But my vision for Cade is he'll be a top 10 to 15-ish top offensive player. He'll be one of the better offensive engines in the league. And he was that this past year, but he's going to be the one guy in that top 10 to 15 that actually is a pretty good defender. and actually will raise your team's defense in that end of the floor. He was really good in the playoffs defensively for the Pistons. He was better defensively all throughout the year this year. One of the best weak side rim protectors at the guard position in the league. It's him, Derek White, and the Thompson twins. Like I had Jalen Suggs is another guy I think is really good at this as well in the Orlando Magic. But I think that's where Cade separates himself. I think that's where he really launches himself into the top 10 this next year, is that he gets slightly better in efficiency this upcoming year, takes even better shots, become a better finisher at the rim. But then it's just even more consistent defensively. And after a full year, instead of just after January where the Pistons were a top 7 defense, I think the Pistons will be a top 7-ish defense all year this year. I think he'll start to get that respect as more of a, not saying he's not going to be an all defensive guy, but I think he'll start being considered now a two-way player by the masses. I think that will raise his or how people think about him in regards to the hierarchy in the league. And I think that's how he leaps into the top 10 this upcoming year.
The opportunity definitely there for Cade Cunningham. I agree with you. Very worthy candidate to be in the top 20. I will admit, I think I had Paolo at 19, Cade 20 on my list. I don't remember exactly, but they were right neck and neck. So let's shift the conversation then to my side, to Paolo Banchero. What Paolo Banchero needs to do to get to that level. We're going to get to that coming up here in just a moment.
Today's episode is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. This grape, ginger, and lime flavored shot brings the iconic taste of a golf course favorite to a non-alcoholic boost. Perfect for sinking birdies and making great memories with friends. It's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Whether you're out on the course or just need a little extra push to power through your day, 5-Hour Energy Transfusion delivers the clubhouse flavor you love without ever leaving. The green golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors. The grape, ginger, lime flavor of a 5-Hour Energy Transfusion gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without leaving the course or chasing down the bev cart. Now you can amp up the fun even more. Just buy, snap, and enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for 2 to any golf tournament in the USA. Tee up that trip. Visit 5hewin.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Master Tournament. This offer ends October 31st, 2025. Again, visit 5hewin.com for full rules and entry and a chance for a dream golf trip to 2 to any golf tournament, excluding the Masters Tournament, which ends October 31st, 2025 with 5-Hour Energy.
On the Magic side of things, they've got one of the best young stars in the Eastern Conference as well. And, they're not, Paolo Banchero and Cade Cunningham aren't fighting for the same all-star spot per se, but they both should be heading to Los Angeles in February. I think that's a pretty safe assumption. Paolo Banchero comes with a whole set of other questions. On our Locked On NBA Top 100 Players list, Paolo came in at number 23. Maybe a little bit lower than some of us thought, but probably in the vicinity. Probably had him in like that 18 to 22 range, maybe as far down as 25. But you got him with some very established players like Jaylen Brown, Pascal Siakam, James Harden, Jaren Jackson. And I think it speaks to some of the uncertainty about Banchero and how he develops. Now, obviously, he's coming off a very injury-riddled season, but I want to start here with you. What is your take on Paolo Banchero and what places him here and maybe not in the same grouping as a Cade Cunningham right now?
So I think a lot of your listeners will probably know that I'm not the highest on Paolo, but the biggest takeaway I had was such how large of a difference there was between Paolo and Franz. Paolo was at 23, Franz was at 35. That was shocking to me. What's for me with Paolo, what's stopping him from being a top 20 guy? Because I had him lower than this. I had Franz a lot higher in my list. Paolo, for me, what's going on with him? It references why I talked about earlier with Cade. I feel like Paolo has a ton of talent, and I think he has a little bit more on-ball juice than Franz does. But Paolo, I feel like, doesn't take the shots. I feel like he kind of disrupts the offense because of how he attacks process-wise offensively. Now, again, I think Paolo would it shock me if next year we're talking about at the end of the season we're like, oh, Paolo's a top 20 player? No, it wouldn't shock me at all because Paolo was is a very talented player. I had him number 1 in his draft class going into this draft. I think that probably is around where I don't know if there's much argument for him to go down any spot, maybe 1 to 2, which
Jalen Williams is like the only argument, really. I mean, some people argue Chet Holmgren, but we could get into that, but that's whole role dependent. The Magic needed a Paolo Banchero more than they needed what Jalen Williams has become. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, so I am very high on the talent that is Paolo. I think he does have top 20 talent. I just don't think that he has actually actualized that talent. I don't think he's there yet. I think that right now he does need to improve the way he attacks the offensive end of the floor, the areas in which he does attack offensively. I do think the Orlando Magic could help him in the ways they utilize him offensively. But my question from an outsider's point of view, I'm sure all of your listeners and you have a better answer for this, is would Paolo accept a different way of Orlando trying to utilize him within an offense? That's a question I have watching him from the outside. But Paolo is a very, very talented player. He is a top 20 talent in the NBA. I'm just waiting for him to actually step into that talent and realize that talent. And if he can make the steps like in his process and mental on the offensive end of the floor, I think he should be a lot better defensively too. But most offensive guys, you kind of deal with that if they're not the greatest defenders, is what it is. Though I think he should be a lot better defender than he is right now. It's just about his process offensively. He can improve that. I think he can get there, but I just feel like he isn't there yet, and that's kind of what frustrates me the most about him.
Yeah, and I think that criticism is fair. Like, I think when we look at Paolo, he puts up the numbers. Like, if this were, he'd be the perfect player for the 2000s and the mid aughts, and just someone who gets you 20, 25 a game and just kind of isolates. He's definitely a very throwback kind of player. Like, he got compared coming out of college to Carmelo Anthony in the way that he played. Like, you could go back into my archives and when we were debating all the three players the Magic could have picked with that top pick, I said, well, if you're drafting Paolo Banchero, you need to be 100% sure he's going to be your 25 a night guy and your lead star, because he may not be able to play another role. He's 23 right now. Like when he's 33, 34, when he's like, maybe not 33, because that's still kind of young, but when he's like 35, 36 toward the tail end of his career, he's not going to be able to carry the load that he's carrying now. Whereas, other like Franz Wagner, I think his game's going to age a little bit better than Paolo's is, because he can do a little bit more. But Paolo is just so good at the things he does that you're right. I think the biggest challenge for him now is that processing speed and understanding when to do the things that he likes to do. I say this a lot, and I'm sure you talk a little bit about this with Cade. When you're the star player, when the ball's in your hands as much as these guys have the ball in their hands, you have to learn and understand when to take the superstar shots, when to be the star and when to be a facilitator, when to be a little bit of a decoy. It's understanding the waves of a game, and that only comes with experience. On top of this, like, let's be real. Paolo Banchero has had very few offensive options next to him. Like, yes, he has Franz Wagner, but if you look at the spacing the Magic have had, they clearly like one of the worst three-point shooting teams of the last decade last year. It's really, really tough to bulldoze your way to the basket. You almost have to settle for mid-range jumpers a lot. I joke with people a lot that it got to a point last year where defenses would leave a player open in the corner, and you would think Paolo Banchero taking a contested fall away mid-range over two defenders is probably a higher percentage shot than passing to the open three-point shooter, because the three-point shooting was just so bad. And so this is a big year for Paolo Banchero because he's got shooting now. Like, Desmond Bane is one of the best shooters in the league. I was very much big this summer saying the Magic need to do what the Pistons did last year, go get some shooting for their guy. Like, get some veterans, and they did last year with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. It clearly wasn't enough. Go get some shooters. So they got Desmond Bane. They got Tyus Jones. Getting Jalen Suggs back, I think, is from the injury that he suffered last year, a really underrated move. Again, small sample size, but he shot like 42% on catch and shoot threes on like 7 or 8 attempts per game in the 5 games before Paolo Banchero's injury. They only played 6 games and 97 minutes together, but he shot 39% on catch and shoot threes in 2024. Jalen Suggs could be an elite catch and shoot three-point shooter. I'm really bullish on him. And Paolo is a much more willing passer. He just needs the guys he can trust, and building that trust is, I think, one of the bigger challenges. But I would also argue that Paolo has made a leap that is kind of hidden in his numbers because he had that month and a half where he was very clearly working himself into shape and just wasn't very good. So it's so much about putting all the pieces together and learning how to be a leader, to be honest. Like, yeah, he's still very, very young, but you got to learn how to be a leader a little bit too, and know when to do the things that a star does, and and when to kind of force your way to the basket, like understand the rhythm of the game. And that's a challenge in and of itself too.
Yeah, I think Paolo is incredibly talented. I think he can get up high on this list if he improves in areas I'd like to see him improve on. I don't know if you want to talk about Franz at any point, because I do like Franz a lot. So I'll wait for whenever you want to talk about Franz a little bit. But
let's talk about Franz,
I don't know.
because like you said on that pod, and go listen to Locked On Pistons pod. It was a great pod. I know Magic fans will probably disagree with some of the points, and I'm sure I did too. But you said on that pod about a month ago now that you thought Franz was a better player than Paolo. Let's dive into that then. What made you say that as I put up the graphic with where Franz is at in our top 100?
Yeah, so where Franz is at, I honestly think is pretty disrespectful to Franz. Like, I think Franz is better than Jamal Murray. I think he's better than De'Aaron Fox. I think he's better than Sabonis. I think he's better than Adebayo. I had Franz I think I had him 26th on my list. I had him ahead of all the smallish guards as well that are ahead of him. Franz is, I don't really understand why people don't seem to like Franz as much as I do. Franz is a legit big two-way player in a league that is dominated by two-way players. This is not an offensive player that, oh, he's okay defensively, so we can. No, he's a legit, really good defensive player at his position. He has size.
Does not
he
get
has
the credit
length.
he deserves on that end.
Yes, he is a legit good defender. He has size. He has length. He's a very good playmaker. He's a very good playmaker for his size. He makes right decisions most of the time when he has the ball in his hands. And the reason why I had Franz a lot higher than Paolo. The reason why I had Franz higher than Paolo and why I think so much highly of Franz is that I agree. I do think spacing will help Paolo a ton. I think it will open up lanes for him, and it will lead to him hopefully playing a lot better in my estimation as a process-wise offensively. But my thing is that Franz plays in the same system. He plays with the same players, and he's more efficient. He gets better shots. He gets to the rim. He's a better finisher. He's a better playmaker. I think all of that stuff. He shoots better at the rim. I think that Franz is just and it kind. I hate to do this, but like when you look at, me and you've talked about this off the air before about like the on-off numbers. The on-off numbers for years now have said that when Franz is on the floor, their Magic are just awesome. They're just straight up monsters. Like they're just amazing when he's on the floor. And it's not the same with Paolo. And I know lineups play with it, and a little bit that can play a little bit noisy with it as well. But years of evidence of it, of Franz, is when he's on the floor, the Orlando Magic offense is actually just really good. Like this past year with Franz on and Paolo off, their offensive rating was 115. Like they're just really good with Franz. And I think the reason why I'm so high on Franz, because I think he knows how to play within an offense, get his while also playing the right way. I don't think he settles very often. I think he takes the right shots. I think he knows how to get teammates involved as well. He can't play. He's able to get his in the throes of the offense without like it feeling like he's. I don't want to say a black hole, because I feel like that's a little bit disrespectful to Paolo. But it's more like he's not stopping the offense when he's going.
No,
I think that leads to better fluidity.
And that's a good observation, because the criticism with Franz in his early days was that he wasn't taking enough shots, and I'd be sitting there like, he's like second on the team in field goal attempts, guys. Like it's not like he's not.
He averaged 24 this year.
He averaged 24.
Averaged 24.
Yeah, and like I think the thing with Franz is it not necessarily, like, to kind of build on the black hole argument. He isn't a sun that everyone revolves around. Like he hasn't like consistently been that. Now, like he did that early in the season when Paolo was out. He kind of got pushed into that role, and that ultimately made him a better player, even though he eventually got hurt doing it. I think Franz's personality is just, I'm not here to take over. Like he wants to be part of the offense. Like if you watch Eurobasket in Germany, you're just like begging him, like, hey, this is your team. Like Dennis Schroeder's great. You love Dennis. We love Dennis. Like Dennis is great. He's not Franz Wagner. Like sometimes you just got to like shake him and say, like, you're the best player on the team. Like go take over the games. And sometimes it doesn't always feel like that's his personality or even that's his game. So he may always need someone like Paolo Banchero, who is comfortable and sort of thrives on taking these bad shots. And it goes to like this chicken or the egg problem that I always ask people is like, is it easier to teach? And I'm saying this like very as nicely as I can. Is it easier to teach a selfish player to be unselfish or an unselfish player to be selfish? and go get their own. And I think Paolo is a willing passer. Let me make that very, very clear. Paolo is very comfortable saying, I'm just going to score on this possession. I'm going to ISO. You're going to set me up somewhere where I like the ball. I'm going to go get a bucket. Franz, I think his first instinct is, what does the offense need right now? And sometimes in like a pressure situation or in the playoffs, especially where, Franz played a lot better in the playoffs against Boston than he did against Cleveland in 2024. Sometimes in those pressure situations, you just need a guy that's going to get you a bucket and beat a good defense. Like that's you saw this last year in the Pistons' first playoff experience. Those games have the tiniest margins. Like it is like they're decided on one or two plays, and a whole series changes based on that. And sometimes you just need a guy that's just going to get you a basket and get you that shot when you absolutely need it. And like Franz has shown he can do that. I'm not sitting here saying he can't, but I just don't think that's his instinct. And that's why, when it comes to the Paolo Franz debate, like Paolo still feels like the alpha, if we want to use that parlance. I don't think there's any friction between the two. I think they complement each other well because of that. And Paolo would love to see Franz shine. Like he's happy to give him the ball when he's got it going. But I think there's a little bit of that where Franz, Paolo's measuring up to, the Carmelos, the LeBrons, the Lucas, like the guys who do all that. And everyone's expecting him to reach those levels of efficiency. Whereas Franz, I don't think aspires to be that kind of player, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, watching the Magic from an outsider point of view, I definitely see that. That is for 100%. Paolo has the more dominant personality on the floor, off the floor. He is, like you mentioned, more of the alpha personality on the floor. I guess I wanted to ask you where you had Franz as well. I want to know where you had him ranked on this list. But
I think I had him mid-20s. I think I had him about where, not where he ended up. I think I had him mid to late 20s. So I think this ranking undervalues him for sure.
Yeah, so I had, like I said, I had him around like 26, I think 26 or 27. I had him pretty high. I guess we'll see how it plays. I have the Orlando Magic as a third seed this year. I think they're going to be very good. I think they're going to be, hopefully if they're healthy, I think they'll be very good, especially with Desmond Bane's addition. I'm ready to see. I guess where I will leave Magic fans with is this. I do think that Paolo is the more dominant personality on the floor. And that I completely agree that sometimes you just need somebody who can beat good defense. And I do believe Paolo has a little bit more on-ball juice as a scorer than Franz does. I guess my lasting statement will be, I think Paolo or Franz at this point, while he doesn't do that, I think he is just more of an impactful player without needing to do that because of the other stuff he does. I think what he brings defensively. And I think maybe in the playoffs, you might be right that in the playoffs, you do eventually need someone to just take the ball and be like, hey, we need you to go get a bucket. And maybe that's where Franz struggles a bit. And maybe in the playoffs, it'll take him a minute to get there. But throughout a majority of the season, the 82-game season, I think Franz has shown to me that he can just impact the game a little bit more consistently positively because of how he's able to keep the offense going, find open guys, and be an impactful defender while also getting shots at the rim consistently and why he's so efficient. So that's where I'm at with Franz. But look, like I said, Paolo's incredibly talented. There could be a future where after this year, both Paolo and Franz are top 25 players, and that could 100% could happen.
Yeah, and very, honestly, especially with the new All-Star format, very likely they're both All-Stars this year if the Magic are as good as we all seem to think they are. Let's close the show then with this. We're going to come back, talk a little bit about where the Magic and Pistons fit into the Eastern Conference landscape and how that will reflect in the rankings next year when we do this. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. Running a little long here. Sorry about that, Nick. But this is Philip Rossman-Reich, the host of Locked On Magic, joined by Kuka Heel of Locked On Pistons. And obviously, we're talking about our young players. And again, let's stress, they are still very, very young. They're not anywhere near their prime. They're probably 2-3 years away from their prime years. They're going to keep getting better. And the Magic and the Pistons find themselves in the race to kind of take over this Eastern Conference that feels very suddenly weak, with the Boston Celtics probably going to be down this year with Jason Tatum out. Jason Tatum is probably going to need another year, so you got a 2-year window there. Same with the Indiana Pacers and Tyrese Halliburton. Both the Pistons made their playoff breakthrough, had a really impressive series against the Knicks. Again, probably the Eastern, one of the favorites in the East this year. What are your expectations for the Pistons coming out of that playoff appearance and what the East is looking like. Considering, the growth that you expect from Cade, the return of Jaden Ivey, as well as like some of the moves that they made in the offseason to work around whatever would happen with Malik Beasley.
Yeah, I think the Pistons' expectations is tricky to talk about because so much of their offseason, basically all of their offseason, has been banked on all the young guys taking a step forward. They didn't go out and take a big swing. I think I saw the Ringer complaint. I forget who it was. It might have been Bill Simmons' podcast. I forget who it was. But someone nationally talked about how usually after that type of season, you go out and take a big swing, and they just didn't do that. So they were confused on where they're going to be at. And it's hard to make predictions with the Pistons because we don't know. Is Jaden Ivey going to take a step forward? Is he going to be a better player? Is Asar going to take another step? Is Jalen Duren going to take another step? Because that's what's going to have to happen. They didn't go out and get anybody really that's going to be a big impactful player. They replaced Beasley with Duncan Robinson, and they replaced Karis LeVert with Dennis Schroeder, who could be better than. I think those are good additions. Those are fine additions, but those aren't going to change your season. Those aren't going to add 5 wins or whatever to your season. It's going to come down to, does Cade go from top 15 to top 10? Does Asar, who I think actually, which by the way, congratulations Locked On for getting this right. You guys finally got right. Someone got right that Asar is the second best player on the Detroit Pistons. They had him at 85. So thank God. I'm very happy to see that. There you go. Asar Thompson at 85. I had him a little higher. I think I had him like 73. But Asar being the second best player on this list for the Pistons, I thank you so much, Locked On. But will Asar take a step forward and become a top 50 player? Will Jalen Duren take a step forward and become a top 100 player? That's what they're relying on. Is Ron Holland going to come in and be like this impactful player in year 2? That's where all of this relies upon. And if they do that, they should be a really good team in the Eastern Conference and challenging for that 4th seed. If they don't, I think they probably stay around the 6th seed, and you start to see maybe some changes made, maybe mid-season or after the season with some of these young players. But so much of it is just, with the Magic, and I wanted to ask you, obviously, do you think the Magic will be a top 3 seed? Because I have them top 3 in the East right now. I think they're going to be the 3rd best team. But with the Magic, they brought in Desmond. I feel like it's so much easier to picture the Magic leaping because they win 41 games without Paolo majority of the season, without Franz missing a ton of the season, with Jalen Suggs missing a ton of the season, with no shooting. And now they still win 41 games. And then this year, they're going to get Paolo healthy, Franz healthy, Suggs healthy. Oh, and also we bring in Desmond Bane. Okay, it's so easy to picture, okay, yeah, this team easily takes a step. You see how it happens. With the Pistons, I feel like it's a little bit harder because you're kind of having to bet on internal improvement, and internal improvement's hard to predict.
Yeah, and growth is never linear. That was
right.
Like a big statement that we always made. The Magic were in the same boat last year. Like Paolo is a year behind Cade, but the team is like a year ahead almost. They did that last year. They grabbed Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. That was their big signing, but they essentially kept the roster the same. There's a huge complaint that the Magic had this last crack with cap room, and they added a really important player. Didn't work out obviously, but they added a really important player, but they kept everything the same. They re-signed Wendell Carter. They re-signed Jonathan Isaac, and they bet everyone was going to get incrementally better. And I would argue Paolo and Franz certainly did. I would argue Jalen Suggs did, but injuries just kind of threw everything out everything out. Just game 5, Paolo gets hurt. They're without Paolo for 2 months. Everything just gets kind of thrown out the window, and you're trying to scramble. And I think that's a really important lesson for these young teams is you can't predict the challenges a season's going to present. So yes, I would agree on paper. I think the Magic are the 3rd best team in the East. I think Orlando wanted a home court advantage last year, and who knows if they would have gotten that goal. I think if they were healthy, they would have been in the running with Indiana, Milwaukee, Detroit for 4, 5, 6, and then eventually 7. So, I think the injuries prevented them from having a chance to accomplish their goals last year. Home court advantage is a minimum goal for them at this point. I do think the 3 seed is very possible, but Jalen Suggs has had one healthy season in his career. He played 76 games in 2024. That was the year they were the 5 seed and really, really good. And he's struggled with injuries throughout his career. Desmond Bane is a really big addition, and his shooting is going to be really, really important. He doesn't have the most sterling injury record either. Not anything devastating or serious, but he doesn't play 70 games regularly. And so I think the Magic still have a little bit of a question of, can they play that physical style of defense that they play for 82 games and survive and get to the playoffs. And essentially, like, to win in the playoffs, you got to be healthy in the playoffs. Like that is the number one lesson of everything. So figuring out the marathon rather than the sprint, I think, is still the big challenge for the Magic. And I think the hope is that now that you've added Desmond Bane, Franz is a little bit better on offense. Paolo's a little bit better on offense. Suggs is healthy. I think the hope is that they can maybe there's a night where the defense doesn't have it and they still win 120 to 115. That was unfathomable last year. Like that was insane. My favorite stat that I peddle to people is, can you guess the Magic's record when they shot 33% from three last year? Mind you, still worse than the league, but 33%.
Is it over 500?
It is over 500, significantly over 500.
I figured, because most of their games are shooting that, and they still won 41 games. So I'll say they won 22 games. They won 22 games. Am I
22
close?
games is a really good guess. They averaged about 32% 3-point shooting last year. They were 27-10 when they shot 33% or better. There's two notes about that. First, they out of an 82 game season, they only played 37 games where they made one of every 3-pointer. Like, again, the Wizards were the second worst shooting team. Yeah, that's the crazy part. But when they even got to that basic level, 27-10 is like a 60-win team. And so, like, again, like there are other things around that. Obviously, you can't like take that as full thing, but like Orlando just needs an average offense if their defense is good. And so that's the big mystery, is whether the Magic can finally end the streak and score enough points. And they seem to have
the defense has been good for a while.
Yeah. That's their bread and butter. And so it's just like, you don't like playing the Magic because they hit you. Because Detroit knows that better than most teams with the matchups they've had over the last 2 years. Whether they can withstand, whether the physicality gets them to the playoffs and through the playoffs, I think is still a huge question. And they're hoping that the offense can carry a little bit more of the load. I think it will, but I'm a little more concerned about their depth than a lot of other people. I think they're relying on a lot of young and unproven guys off their bench if their top guys are out.
Yeah, so look, I think Orlando's gonna be really good. I really like their roster. I love the size. I love the way they've built the team. I've loved it for like 2 years now. I love that they have these two big wings and they have big guys around them as well. And then they're one small guy, which is Jalen Suggs. He's not really small, but like the smaller guy is a dog defensively. I absolutely love the build. I mean, I really like the move going after Desmond Bane. I don't care that it was gave up a lot of picks. I think it's exactly what they needed. They needed a 3-point shooter who also isn't just a slouch defensively, gets pushed around, has like that dog mentality. And also, again, it's just a lights out 3-point shooter, one of the better 3-point shooters in the entire NBA. So I think Orlando, as long as they're healthy, should be a top 3 seed. And the Pistons, I think they'll be fighting for the 4th seed with the Atlanta Hawks, as long as guys take a step forward. If they don't, I think you might be seeing some changes to some of the young guys mid-year.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating season. I think the Pistons are one of the teams to watch. I think people are not talking enough about them. Like, Orlando and Atlanta obviously made the big moves in the offseason to kind of try and jump the line, so to speak. But I think Detroit was mostly smart, kind of holding their water and saying, let's let this team grow a little bit. They still have avenues to get better in the trade market when it comes. But like, clearly Cade Cunningham is one of the best players in the league. And I think people are about to discover that this season. And I think it's going to be a fascinating year for both the Magic and the Pistons. And we get a pretty big game coming up in December. We might have to talk before that one if we care about the NBA Cup at all. Ku, it is always great to have you on the show. It is always great to talk to you. And we will see you, as always, in the Eastern Conference Finals.
All right, we'll see you then. And that's all we got for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed today's crossover episode with Locked On Magic. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comment section down below or over on Twitter @KukaHill. And until next time, I will see you guys later. Hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. And until next time, I will see you guys later. Stay safe out there, and peace out, everybody.